Hi guys, good morning. So tomorrow CA Inter paper 4 direct tax and GST. I'm sure you guys are preparing in full swing. You're in the fifth gear of your preparation. Now the agenda for this video is to quickly revise the chapter of TDS and TCS, a chapter that is regularly part of your question paper. And there have been quite a few small amendments, but quite a lot of amendments actually in the chapter of TDS. And so the agenda for this video is to just quickly revise the chapter, not go into an in-depth discussion. I've prepared a small bit of summary notes, and in the description of this video, you will find the Google Drive link for this PDF. So you can revise the entire chapter of TDS TCS in a nutshell using this PDF. The intent here is to go through things very quickly and do it in such a way that it is relevant from your examination perspective. Chalo. So let's begin. TDS, the major thing in the chapter, tax deducted at source. Tax collected at source is a very small part of the chapter, although from an examination perspective, TCS is important because of the amendments. We'll focus on TDS first of all, tax deducted at source. Tax deducted at source, TDS, it is the responsibility, it is the liability, it is the duty of the payer. And the payer will deduct tax either on payment or on credit, whichever event happens earlier. That is a liability on that is the event on which he is supposed to deduct tax when he pays the amount to the receiver or when he credits the amount in the receiver's ledger account, whichever is earlier. TDS has to be done as per certain rates. Those TDS rates are given to you by the sections. But specifically, if you are making a payment to non-residents, then you not only have to deduct the basic TDS amount, but you also have to deduct surcharge, health education cess. Just for simple theory, remember this, there is a very less chance that this comes up in your paper. If you are talking of an employee who is receiving the income, that means salary, you will not only deduct the basic tax, this will be as per section number 192, but you will also deduct surcharge. If the amount exceeds 50 lakhs but up to 1 crore, 10%, above 1 crore but up to 2 crore, 15%, you may remember that these are the same rates of surcharge that we have studied while we were discussing tax rates. So the surcharge rates for TDS are also the same, 10, 15, 25, 37%. Along with that, health and education cess also has to be deducted at the rate of 4%. It does not matter whether your employee is a resident or a non-resident, surcharge, health education cess will be deducted. If you are now making a payment to non-resident individuals, HUF, AOP, but they must all be non-residents, then the same rates of surcharge and health education cess will apply. Basic TDS, as per the section, you will deduct the tax, whatever is the section's rate. You will also deduct surcharge, you will also deduct health and education cess, and that will be your total TDS amount, provided you are making a payment to non-residents. If you are making a payment to a non-resident firm, whatever is the TDS rate applicable as per the section, you will definitely deduct that. Surcharge will apply if the amount that you are paying to that firm exceeds 1 crore. The rate is 12%. It is the same rate of surcharge that is applicable when the firm pays tax itself. 4% health education cess will apply. Again, the thing to observe, the firm must be a non-resident. If the receiver is a foreign company, greater than 1 crore, but up to 10 crore, 2% surcharge will also be deducted. If the amount that you are paying is above 10 crore, you will have to deduct another 5% as surcharge in addition to basic TDS. Health education cess of 4% will apply. Point to observe, if the receiver is a resident person, then you don't need to deduct surcharge and health education cess. You will only deduct basic tax, basic TDS. Surcharge and health education cess shall not be deducted at source. Just give it a glance. There isn't much of importance here. Moving on, chalo. The same concept will apply to TCS also. If you're collecting tax from resident persons, then TCS provisions will not be applicable. But if you are collecting tax from non-residents, so TCS provisions will apply. Whether you make a payment for personal purpose or business purpose, beyond a point of time, it will not make a difference. Many TDS sections are applicable for payments for personal purposes also. There are 2-3 exceptions here and there. As we revise, we'll see them. Something important, and please remember this. If the payer is an individual or HUF, then in the preceding financial year, if the turnover exceeded 1 crore or exceeded 50 lakhs, 1 crore in case of business, 50 lakhs in case of profession, in the preceding financial year, then in the current financial year, when you are making a payment in certain sections, you have to deduct tax. Only then TDS ka section will apply. 194A, 194C, 194H, 194I, and 194J. 194A interest, 194C contractor payments, 194H commission, 194I rent, 194J professional fees, technical fees, royalty, non-compete fees. If the payer in the current year is individual or HUF, then check, is the turnover in the preceding financial year greater than 1 crore, greater than 50 lakhs? If yes, only then in the current year as an individual HUF, as a payer, I have to deduct tax. Another important section, 206AA. TDS is the responsibility of the payer. Then there is a responsibility of the receiver also. The receiver is supposed to submit his permanent account number to the payer. If he fails to submit his permanent account number, then whatever is the rate of TDS as per the relevant section, or 20%, whichever is higher of the two, will be the TDS rate. If you are deducting tax under section 194O, this is 194O is the amendment, TDS applicable on the e-commerce transactions, then instead of 20%, it will be 5%. Formula remains the same. Rate given in the section or 5%, whichever is higher, if it is 194O. If it is any other section, rate given in the section or 20%, whichever is higher. The receiver is supposed to submit his permanent account number. A very interesting thing, something worth remembering, if you submit your Aadhaar number instead of permanent account number, then it is absolutely fine. Section 139A is a section where you have to obtain permanent account number. In that 139A, there is a subsection 5E. If you remember this, fine. If you don't remember the subsection number, that's also okay. This subsection says that wherever in the entire Income Tax Act, if you are required to submit permanent account number, and instead of submitting permanent account number, if you submit your Aadhaar number, it is absolutely cool. It is absolutely fine. It will be treated okay, you have complied with the provisions. And so, if the payer is asking for permanent account number and the receiver is giving Aadhaar number, this section will not apply. It is assumed that yes, permanent account number is submitted or Aadhaar number is submitted, is one and the same. So you will not deduct tax at a higher rate, you will deduct tax as per the section's rate only. Time limit to deposit TDS. If the payer is government is deducting tax, then TDS is deposited without the challan. Challan is a document that you prepare when you deposit the TDS with the government. If you deposit the TDS without challan, you have to deposit the TDS on the same day. If not, 7th of the next month is the time limit, as payer being the government. If the payer is any person other than government, then TDS is deducted in the month of March. On or before 30th April, you have to deposit the tax. If TDS is deducted in any month between April to February, 7th of the next month is the time limit to deposit the TDS. But for 194A, sorry, 194 IA, IB, and 194 M. It's not 7th of the next month. 30 days from the end of the month in which you deduct tax. When we see these sections, I'll mention them again. So general time limit to remember, 7th of the next month. If tax is deducted in the month of March, then it is 30th of April. This is the time limit according to which you have to deposit the TDS with the government. If you do not deposit the TDS up to this time limit, so if there is a default in depositing TDS, then you will be paying interest under section 201 subsection 1A. Theory knowledge, just keep it in mind. 1.5% per month from the date tax was deducted at source to the date tax was actually deposited with the central government. But of course, this interest will be calculated on the TDS amount. So this is the interest if you make a default in depositing TDS. An amendment which you will have to keep at the back of your mind whenever you are solving any TDS question. This is an amendment specifically applicable for your attempt only. Due to COVID, this period, 14th May 2020 to 31st March, TDS rates were reduced by 1/4. So the trick is very simple. Try and remember the original rates. And whatever is the original rate, that rate will apply if the transaction happens between 1st April, beginning of the year, to 13th May. But if the transaction happens between 14th May to 31st March, take the original rate, reduce 1/4, whatever you get as the 3/4 component, that is going to be the TDS rate. This is a relief given by government, but this relief is given only if you are making a payment to residents, which means the receiver should be a resident receiver. If you are making a payment to non-residents, no reduction, full TDS rate will apply. If you are making salary payments, if you are deducting tax when money is taxable under RPF, no reduction in TDS rates. If you have casual winnings from horse race, full TDS rates will apply. And these three situations of TCS, no reduction, no decrease at all, you will have to collect tax at the full rate. So keep this much in mind. Salary payments, winnings, non-resident payments, tax collected at source in these three situations, no reduction at all, original rates will apply. Everywhere else, 1/4 reduction if it is from 14th May 2020 to 31st March 2020. So now let's get into the sections. First section, 192, salary. Salary to TDS will be done by the employer. He is deducting tax of the employee. So he will calculate the tax as per slab rates. But of course, it will be done on an estimated basis. Income will be estimated of the employee. Tax will be calculated on that income according to slab rates. And that tax will be spread throughout the year. So if the employee is working for 12 months, take the total amount divided by 12 months. Suppose the employee has newly joined the organization and he is working only for 7 months. So take the TDS amount, divide it by 7 months, and tax will be deducted every month. This is one section where tax is deducted on payment basis only. So if salary is not paid, there will be no requirement to deduct tax. Payment or credit, whichever is earlier, does not apply in this case. In this case, it is only payment. If the employee is working with two employers simultaneously doing part-time jobs, then he can choose any one employer, give him form number 12B. And in that form number 12B, this employee will give details about salary paid by the other employer, TDS done by the other employer. The employer who gets the 12B will take all this data into account and he will calculate the TDS on the entire income, salary received from both the employers. He will calculate the exact TDS whatever tax has been deducted by the other employer will be adjusted. This current employer to whom you have given 12B will deduct tax only of the balance amount. Giving 12B is not compulsory, giving 12B is optional. Similarly, submission of form number 12B is optional. Similarly, suppose employee is earning other incomes also, and employee feels that okay, let me give information about other incomes to my employer so that the employer can do TDS on other incomes as well. Again, you have to submit 12B, but giving 12B is optional, is not mandatory. So if you give 12B, then 2-3 things that you got to keep in mind. Number one, as far as house property is concerned, the employer will take into account the profit, that means the income or the loss. But as far as other heads of income are concerned, he will only consider the other heads if there is a profit. If there is a loss, he will not consider the loss in the computation. You will have to do, as an employer, you will have to do your calculations in two parts. First, take the salary income. When I say salary income, it means all the permissible deductions have to be considered. Everything, deduction, exemption, perquisites, everything. Consider house property, profit or loss, anything. But other heads, only profit. If the employee says he is suffering a loss, employer will not consider that loss in the TDS working. Gross total income, deduction, estimated total income, on that tax is being calculated. If tax is deducted at source by other deductors, then that amount has to be adjusted, has to be reduced in this working. This will give you point number A. Generally, this is the TDS to be done. But if your house property has a loss, then a second calculation will have to be done. The second calculation says, take the loss of house property, adjust it from salary, only take these two things. No chapter 6A deduction, no other heads of income, only take these two items, calculate your income, calculate the tax on it, that is B. A amount was also a tax amount, B amount was also a tax amount. Out of the two, whichever is higher will be the TDS done by the employer. You may get a practical question because this is probably the only section where a working has to be done. The amendment introduced by Finance Act 2020. Important. If the employer is an eligible startup, it's a startup company, and this startup company is giving you ESOP as a perquisite, then ESOP as a perquisite will be taxable in the current year only. That means as far as our exams are concerned, it will be taxable in previous year 2021. But the TDS on this ESOP is going to be deferred, is going to be postponed. We will calculate a future date. Let's call this future date as a specified date. There is a formula for it, future specified date. And from this future specified date, count 14 days. In this 14 days, employer is supposed to deduct the TDS on the ESOP. And by chance, if the employer fails or if the employer is not able to deduct TDS, then it does not mean that the government will not get tax. Employee personally is supposed to pay this tax. This will be a direct payment. He has to pay directly under section 191. So employer will deduct TDS under section 192. That's the section that we are studying. But if for any reason employer cannot deduct it, then the employee will have to pay that TDS from his own pocket. Will have to pay that tax from his own pocket. What is the future specified date? 48 months from the end of the assessment year. The assessment year That means that previous year in which you were given the ESOP, find that previous year, take the assessment year, end of that assessment year, 31st March, add 48 months. That means add 4 years. Date of sale of specified security, that means sale of the ESOP, or the date on which the employee quits the job. Out of the 3 dates, whichever is the earliest date, that earliest date is that future specified date. And from this future specified date, within a span of 14 days, either the employer will deduct the tax, or if the employer is not able to deduct tax, employee will have to pay that tax from his own pocket. So this was your section number 192. 192A. When a recognized provident fund pays an amount to you, when you receive money from RPF. Now, amount received from RPF is exempt under section 1012 if your service period is 5 years or more than that. If your service period is less than 5 years, but you are receiving the money on your termination of job, but why did you terminate the job? Because of your ill health, because of the employer's business getting discontinued, because of any reason beyond the control of employee, and you received the money, then also it is exempt. Naturally, if the amount is exempt, then there is no need to deduct any tax. But if your situation does not fall anywhere, so your service period is less than 5 years, but it does not fall in ill health, contraction or discontinuance, any other reason beyond the control, now the amount received is taxable. But obviously, if the amount is taxable, then TDS provisions will apply under section 192A. And provision is very simple. Tax will be deducted at source at the rate of 10%. Who is going to be responsible? Recognized provident fund is a trust. So there will be a trustee, the manager, who will make the payment. He is responsible to deduct the tax. TDS rate is 10%, provided the amount that you pay is 50,000 or more than that. So if the amount is taxable, only then the TDS section will apply, but it has to be minimum 50,000 amount paid. If the receiver does not furnish his permanent account number, now we are aware that if the receiver does not furnish his permanent account number, then 206AA will apply. What is 206AA saying? Rate of TDS in the section or 20%, whichever is higher. But what has this section done? This section, what it has done is, it has said that this rate will be maximum marginal rate, 42.744%. 30% maximum rate plus 37% surcharge plus 4% health education cess. So, but obviously, whichever is higher is going to be 42.744% only. And so, if the receiver does not give his permanent account number, tax will be deducted at 42.744%. No reduction at all in case of TDS under 192A. This is a small error. There won't be any reduction. This will be at the rate of 10% only. Interest, a section which has nothing difficult. 2 sections covering interest. 193, interest on securities. 194A, interest other than interest on securities. TDS rate at both places is 10%. Who is the receiver? Resident. Important thing to pay attention to here is the exceptions. The situations where you don't have to deduct any tax. 193, very simple. Number 1, if the receiver is an insurance company and you are paying interest to an insurance company, no need to deduct tax. This exception is there in section 194A also. Second exception, if you are paying interest to individual HUF, that means individual HUF who is a resident of India, they are the receivers. Who is paying interest? A company in which the public are substantially interested, which means this is the payer. Amount of interest does not exceed 5,000 and you pay the interest via account pay check. Then there is no need to deduct any tax. So payer should be a public company, receiver should be individual HUF who is a resident. The interest should not exceed 5,000 and the interest is paid by account pay check. Only then TDS provisions will not apply. Third and the last exception, interest payable on any security. Any security will cover bonds, will cover debentures, anything on which you are paying interest. If this security is held in dematerialized form, if this security is held in demat form and it is listed on a recognized stock exchange in India, then irrespective of the amount, irrespective of the mode of payment, there will be no need to deduct any tax. You just have to satisfy two things. One, it should be in dematerialized form. Second, it should be listed on a recognized stock exchange. Section number 193, these three exceptions. 194A. If it is interest on FD and RD, so if it is interest on fixed deposits, recurring deposits, FD, RD, who is the payer? Bank is the payer. Bank will also include cooperative banks and post office is the payer. If you make a fixed deposit, recurring deposit with any one of them and they are paying interest to you, up to 40,000, no TDS. But if you are a resident senior citizen, 60 years or more at any time, and you are a resident of India, then the threshold is 50,000. Up to 40,000, up to 50,000, no TDS. If it crosses 40,000, if it crosses 50,000, tax will have to be deducted. Receiver insurance company, no need to deduct tax. Receiver is a bank, cooperative bank, post office, no need to deduct tax. If interest is paid or credited by a firm to its partner, remember in this, every interest is covered. Interest on capital, interest on your current account, interest on any loan given, everything is covered. If interest is paid or credited by a firm to a partner, firm will not deduct any TDS. If one cooperative society makes a payment to another cooperative society or makes a payment to member, no need to deduct tax. Now, in this case, there is a small amendment that if the payer is a cooperative society, the receiver is a member of a cooperative society or any other cooperative society. But condition number one, in the preceding financial year, this payer had a turnover exceeding 50 crores. So it was working on a large scale basis. Its turnover in last year was about 50 crores. And in the current year, if it is paying interest greater than 50,000 to a senior citizen or greater than 40,000 in other case, senior citizen of course will cover resident senior citizen. So last year, the payer cooperative society had a turnover in excess of 50 crores. Current year, the interest amount is greater than 50,000 or greater than 40,000. Then in this case, TDS provisions will apply, which means the exceptions point number 5 still remains valid. General concept, when one cooperative society pays interest to member or another cooperative society, don't deduct tax. But if the payer has a turnover above 50 crores in the preceding year, and if the interest paid in the current year is more than 50,000 for a resident senior citizen, more than 40,000 in other cases, then you will have to deduct tax. In case of senior citizens, in case of savings account and current accounts, any interest paid, no need to deduct tax. Observe one thing, for FD and RD interest, there is a threshold of 40,000, 50,000. Only if the interest goes above 40 or 50,000, TDS applies. But in case of savings account and current account, there is no amount limit prescribed. So whatever be the interest in savings or current account, no TDS. If central government is paying interest under Income Tax Act, interest on income tax refund, no need to deduct tax. If if payment is being made on zero coupon bonds, now zero coupon bond itself means that there is 0% interest. So where is the question of TDS? Income is taxable under capital gains and not interest income. So no TDS. This is one section where the concept of 1 crore or 50 lakhs in the preceding financial year applies. If the payer is individual or HUF and it is paying interest to someone today, then in the preceding year, if it was more than 1 crore, more than 50 lakhs, then and only then TDS provisions will apply in the current year. So this was your 194A. Moving ahead, dividend. Now we are all aware that dividend now has become taxable as income from other sources. For the shareholder, for the unit holder, dividend distribution tax has been abolished. So two sections of TDS have been introduced. Way too simple. Yes, it's an amendment, but it is very easy. Domestic company pays dividend to a resident shareholder, 10% TDS. If the amount of dividend is up to 5,000 and the payment is made by any mode other than cash. So any mode other than cash will mean check payments are covered, payments made online, Rule 6 ABBA, internet banking, wallet payments, everything is covered. Check payments mean all check payments, account pay, cross check, bearer check, everything is covered. Any mode other than cash, dividend amount is up to 5,000, don't deduct tax. If the receiver is an insurance company, don't deduct tax. We saw it in section 193 also, we saw it in section 194A also. Similarly, if a mutual fund is paying dividend to a unit holder, TDS is at the rate of 10%. If the dividend is up to 5,000, don't deduct tax. This section is talking about dividend income, not talking of capital gains. Surprisingly, receiver is an insurance company. This point is not mentioned as an exception here. So if the receiver is an insurance company, then TDS under section 194K will apply. If a domestic company is paying dividend to insurance company, don't deduct tax. But if a mutual fund is paying dividend to an insurance company, TDS provisions will be applicable. I'll clarify one more thing here. This first exception about that 5,000, this is applicable only if the receiver is an individual. Of course, an individual who is a resident of India. So as far as dividend is concerned, this is something quite simple. 10% is the rate. Reduction concept applies. Up to 5,000, don't deduct any TDS. Insurance company receiving dividend from domestic company, no TDS. But from mutual fund, TDS provisions will apply. So, going ahead. Winnings. Okay, nothing great. Lottery, puzzles, gambling, that is casual winnings. 30% TDS rate, no reduction at all. Winnings from horse race. So when you are doing betting on a horse race, then the section created is 194BB. TDS at the 30%. Threshold limit of 10,000 applies. And if your winnings are partly in kind or partly in cash, by the way, there is no COVID relief here. There is no reduction of 1/4. This tax will be deducted at full 30%. If the winnings are partly in cash, partly in kind, then the payer has to ensure that he collects the TDS amount from the receiver, the deficit TDS amount, he collects it from the receiver, and only then he must release the winnings to the receiver. So the payer will not bear the TDS from his own pocket. Whatever is the deficit amount, he will collect it from the receiver and give it to the government. Casual winnings, nothing great, just remember 30%. Another section, as such way too easy, it's because of an amendment that we'll have to spend about 2 minutes on it. Commission. Insurance commission 194D. If you sell lottery tickets, then you will get commission on the lottery tickets that you sold, 194G, and any other commission, 194H. Threshold limit everywhere is the same, greater than 15,000. Only then TDS will apply, greater than 15. Rate 5%. COVID relief is available, 1/4 reduction. Point to observe is, if the payer is individual HUF, then 194H, other commissions, that section will apply only if the turnover is above 1 crore, above 50 lakhs. We are already aware of this also. We've seen this type of a provision in 194A. Even if you make a payment for personal purposes, 194H will still apply. So I am purchasing a flat for my residential purpose, and to the broker I am paying brokerage above 15,000. This section will still apply. I am purchasing a commercial property for my business and I'm paying brokerage. This section will apply. I am purchasing some goods for my business and I am paying commission to the agent. This section will apply. Personal or business does not make a difference. 194H will apply. A clarification: commission paid to employees, that is taxable under salaries, and for salaries we already have section number 192. So everything will be deducted under 192 and not under this section. Going ahead, okay, something important. From an examination point of view, if you are expecting a question from TDS, you can be rest assured that maybe 8 out of 10 times you will have one thing based on rent. 194I, rent payment, assets which are covered for rent, machinery, plant, equipment. The word plant will cover air conditioners, motor cars, computers. The definition of plant that you have studied in block of assets is equally applicable here also. If you are taking machine on rent, plant on rent, equipment on rent, then when you pay the rent, you have to deduct tax at 2%. If you are taking open plot of land on rent, building on rent, furniture on rent, you have to deduct TDS at 10%. Threshold limit is greater than 2,40,000. This limit is applicable person wise, or if I can write down, this limit is applicable receiver wise. To that one receiver, I am paying rent greater than 2,40,000, whether it is for a single asset or multiple assets, whether it is for 12 months or less than 12 months. But if the rent is greater than 2,40,000, then I am supposed to deduct TDS. And it is not transaction wise, it is person wise, receiver wise. Another point to remember, if the payer is individual HUF, you're already aware, turnover in the preceding financial year exceeds 1 crore in case of business, greater than 50 lakhs in case of profession, only then section 194I will apply. Now, government created 194IB, and government's logic of creating 194IB is, if 194I is not applicable, then IB will apply. Remember, who is going to be covered as a payer? Individual and HUF only. But if they are not covered by 194I, then they'll be covered by 194IB, which means we just saw a provision that individual and HUF will be covered by 194I if their turnover for the preceding financial year exceeds 1 crore, exceeds 50 lakhs. So if the turnover does not exceed 1 crore, look at the screen please, does not exceed 50 lakhs, then 194I does not apply, then IB will apply. Payer is individual HUF. Which assets are covered? Rent that is paid for land or building or both. So that means one thing which I would like to mention is that 194IB does not cover, 194IB does not cover, does not include rent paid for plant, machinery, furniture, equipment. It only covers land and building. Threshold, the rent amount should be greater than 50,000 monthly rent. For month or part of a month, the rent amount should be greater than 50,000. Tax to be deducted at source at the rate of 5%. 194 IB, you have to deduct tax only once. Either you deduct tax in the last month of the previous year, that means you deduct tax in the month of March, or if your tenancy is expiring before March, then the last month of your tenancy. So 194 IB is not to be done monthly. It is not to be done monthly. You have to do 194 IB just once in a year. Now comes a problem. If when you are doing TDS under 194 IB, it is the last month of the financial year or the last month of the tenancy. What if that receiver, owner, does not give you permanent account number? If he does not give you permanent account number, then 206AA will apply. If 206AA will apply, rate of TDS 5% or rate given in the section 20%, whichever is higher. So you will select 20%. Now your TDS will be 20% of the full year's rent, or maybe full tenancy period's rent. But now there is a possibility that this TDS could be greater than the last month's rent. So all the preceding months you've already paid the money. Now the owner is refusing to give you his permanent account number or Aadhaar number. So you will invoke section 206AA, but the TDS is more than last month rent. What do I do? No problem. TDS will be restricted to the last month rent. Section clarifies this also, that the amount of TDS will be equal to the last month rent. You will not be treated as a defaulting assessee. You will deduct tax which is equal to the last month rent. 194 IB, tax will have to be deposited within 30 days, 7th of the next month, within 30 days from the end of the month in which you deduct tax. Some small points to discuss for 194I. 194I, if it is a non-refundable deposit, that means this is equal to rent. Tenant pays a non-refundable deposit, so that means the owner is not going to give the money back. That means it is owner's income and tenant's expense. It's not an asset, it's not a liability. It's an income, it's an expense. Owner's income, tenant's expense. Do TDS on the non-refundable deposit also. If the deposit is refundable, then but obviously refundable deposit means it is an asset for the tenant, and we don't do TDS on assets and liabilities, so TDS will not apply. Warehouse, another thing which may come up as a small question. If you are paying something for warehouse, it means you are paying something for space, you are paying something for area, you are paying something for storage. That means what you are paying is rent, and that means 194I will apply. But if you are making a payment to a cold chain facility, then you are making a payment for preservation of goods. They are perishable goods and you are wanting them to be preserved. And so you are going to a air conditioned warehouse, a cold storage facility. Now this is a work contract, and work contract means TDS will be done as per 194C and not as per 194I. If it is pure storage, 194I. If it is cold storage facility, it is 194C. Rent, something that may come up as a question, so please ensure you study rent properly. Chalo, moving ahead. Transfer of immovable property. Now, here the thing to observe, when you are transferring immovable property, it is other than agricultural land, which is not a capital asset. एक second. So, if the property that I am discussing is movable, then section 194 IA does not apply only. This section is not applicable. If the property is immovable, then I'll divide it into two parts, land and building. Building can be residential, building can be commercial also, does not make a difference. Land, if it is a capital asset, then yes, on that 194 IA applies. If it is not a capital asset, then no need to deduct any TDS under 194 IA. And if it is building, so definitely 194 IA will apply. Just try and remember this stuff. The consideration should be greater than or equal to 50 lakh rupees. When there is a concept of transfer, buyer, the transferee, he will make the payment. Seller will receive the money, transferor. So buyer is supposed to deduct tax. What will the buyer pay? He will not pay the profit to you. He will pay the consideration to you. If that consideration is 50 lakhs or more, TDS will apply. 1% is the rate. COVID relief is available. What do I mean by the term consideration? It not only includes the the flat cost, but it also includes charges like club membership fee, parking fee, electricity fee, maintenance cost paid. All that is also part of the transaction only. So flat cost plus parking cost plus club fee plus advance maintenance given, electricity deposit given, all of this put together, if it is 50 lakhs or more, then TDS provision will apply. Generally, when you say transfer of immovable property, our mind says capital gains. But then for somebody, immovable property can be held as stock in trade also. For this seller, the first head of income that comes to our mind is capital gains. But for a builder also, he can also be selling a flat or a plot of land. It does not make a difference whether for the seller this is taxable as capital gains or PGBP. The buyer will deduct TDS in both cases. This section shall apply even if where the income is taxable for the receiver under the head PGBP. Chalo, going ahead, other sections. Even this is a section where you have to deposit TDS within 30 days, 194 IA. 7th of the next month does not apply. You have to deduct tax, you have to deposit it within 30 days from the end of the month. 194 DA, amount received from life insurance policies. Sorry. Generally speaking, amount received from life insurance policies is exempt under 1010D. But there are certain exceptions. In all these exceptions, the amount received will be taxable. But obviously, if it is taxable, then 194 DA as a section of TDS will apply. I've mentioned up everything in detail. You can just go through the list. You might be aware also, it's a matter of revision. If your payment amount, if the amount that is being paid to you exceeds 1 lakh rupees, then TDS will apply. But you will not deduct tax on 1 lakh. You will deduct tax on the profit element or the income element. This amount paid by the insurance company should be greater than 1 lakh. But TDS will be done in the income component. TDS will be done on the profit element. What is the profit element? Insurance company paying the amount minus the premiums paid. Whatever is the difference, on that difference only, insurance company will deduct tax, and that tax will be deducted at the rate of 5%. Of course, it will all apply if your insurance money is taxable. If your insurance money is exempt under 1010D, then but obviously section 194DA is not applicable only. Then there is no need to deduct tax. Next section, important, has amendments. You can expect a small sub question in the TDS question, a small sub question based on this. 4 payments are covered, actually 5. Fees for professional services, fees for technical services, royalty, non-compete fees, and director remuneration. But that director remuneration should not be taxable as income from salary. Threshold limit is 30,000. This 30,000 is separately applicable for first 4 items. There is no limit prescribed for director fees. So director fees, TDS will be done whether the fee amount is below 30,000, equal to 30,000, or greater than 30,000. TDS will always be done. 10% was the original rate. Even for fees for technical services, it was 10%. What the budget has done is, it has made this small amendment where from 10% it is brought down to 2%. COVID relief, of course, is applicable. So in 194J, the TDS rate is 10%. Fees for technical services, it is 2%. If you are making a payment to somebody who is in the business of operation of call center, so he is running a call center for you and you are paying his fees, then TDS will be done at the rate of 2%. Amendment number 1, fees for technical service, from 10% it has come down to 2%. Amendment number 2, if you are paying royalty, and why are you paying royalty? For sale of cinematographic films, for distribution of cinematographic films, for exhibition showing the cinematographic films, and the payer is paying money, that is royalty. TDS rate is 2% instead of 10. Royalty definition also has been amended. Just for your knowledge, you don't need to keep this in mind as such. Royalty definition also has been amended. This will be treated as royalty income, and 10% pay, 2% will apply. If the receiver, again something important, please remember this. If the receiver is an individual or HUF, greater than 1 crore, greater than 50 lakhs in the preceding financial year, only then TDS will apply. You know this stuff. If you are making fees for professional service ka payment, but it is for personal purposes, then 194J will not apply. In fact, here I will go to that extent and mention a turnover in the preceding financial year is greater than 1 crore or less than equal to 1 crore, greater than 50 lakhs, less than equal to 50 lakhs, does not matter. If you are making a payment for personal purposes, then 194J will not apply. Going ahead, another section important, 194C. Just a second. Yeah, 194C. It has an amendment, but very frankly, even if there was no amendment, this is one of the crucial sections for TDS chapter. Certain payers called as specified persons, government, local authority, companies, cooperative societies, partnership firm, everybody covered. Even foreign companies, foreign governments are covered. Individual HUF will be covered only if the turnover exceeds 1 crore, exceeds 50 lakhs in the preceding year. You are making a payment to a contractor or a subcontractor. So you are making a payment for work contract. One-time payment exceeds 30,000, then the section of TDS will apply. Total payment exceeds 1 lakh. So to the same person, you may pay one time below 30,000. But if the aggregate during the year exceeds 1 lakh, then the section of TDS will apply. If the receiver is individual HUF, 1%, otherwise 2%, COVID relief available, work. Advertising covered, broadcasting covered, transportation of goods covered, catering covered, manufacturing and supplying a product as per the requirement of the customer by using materials purchased from such customer. That means what you are doing is basically job work. Customer is giving material to you, customer is giving the order, he is telling you what type of product he wants. You have to just do the job work and give the money and give the product to him. Then it is a work contract. So if customer gives you an order, tells you the requirement and specifications, but you are going to purchase the raw material from anybody else, then it is a pure sale contract. And if it is a sale contract, then section 194C will not apply. 194C is applicable only in case of a work contract. You must purchase materials from the customer, not from anybody else. Now the amendment introduced here is, if you purchase the raw materials from a related party, not the customer, but somebody who is a related party of the customer. Related party means somebody defined in section 40A subsection 2. So you are not buying goods from the customer, you are buying goods from the you are buying materials from the related party of the customer. Even this will be included in the work contract. So this is the amendment. If the contractor subcontractor has to manufacture, supply a product according to the requirements of the assessee and purchase the material from the assessee. Assessee means the customer. The customer who is going to pay the money. So he is the payer. Or has to purchase the material from a person related to the customer. Then TDS under 194C shall apply. But if he does not have to purchase the materials from the assessee or from a related person, then 194C will not apply. Another concept to remember, why am I saying important? It will have repercussions later on. If the payer is individual HUF, we have already seen that the turnover in the preceding financial year should be greater than 1 crore, greater than 50 lakhs. But even in such a situation, if the payment is for personal purposes, 194C will not apply. In case of transport operators, if you are in the business of plying or hiring goods carriage, that means the receiver is in the business of plying or hiring goods carriage, means that the receiver is a transport operator. Now, if the number of vehicles, number of trucks that he has are less than equal to 10, and he gives it in writing, he gives a declaration in writing along with his permanent account number, then TDS provisions will not apply, whatever be the amount. Transport operator will be excluded. As a receiver, TDS will not apply. Number of trucks are less than equal to 10, and he gives a declaration in writing along with his permanent account number. If both these conditions are satisfied, then there is no need to deduct tax. But if any of these condition is not satisfied, then TDS will apply. And if he does not give permanent account number, then we are aware that 206 AA will come into picture, and you will have to deduct tax not at 1% or 2%, but 20%. We've already discussed this circular, cold storage. It is a work contract. Now comes 194M. 194M was created by the government, where government felt that if 194C, 194H and 194J are not applicable, then individual HUF, who are the payers, they will have to deduct tax under 194M. Everywhere in the lecture, I have always told you, an important point. And what was that? Turnover in the preceding financial year should be greater than 1 crore, greater than 50 lakhs. So now you can see that if the turnover does not exceed 1 crore, does not exceed 50 lakhs, then 194H, 194C, 194J, contractor payments, commission payments, 194J, professional fees. Those three sections will not apply. Then 194M will apply. If the turnover in the preceding year is greater than 1 crore, greater than 50 lakhs, but you are making a payment for work contract, that means you are talking of 194C, or you are making a payment for you are paying professional fees but for personal purposes, that means you are talking 194J. But the moment you say it is personal purposes, 194J and 194C don't apply. That is where 194M will apply. Threshold limit created. If you are making a payment greater than 50 lakhs, tax to be deducted at source 5%, COVID relief is available here. The payer will have to deposit this TDS within 30 days from the end of the month. 7th of the next month ka concept does not apply. If you are going to deduct tax here, then you don't need to obtain a permanent account or tax deduction account number. You can easily deduct tax without having a tax deduction account number. A theoretical point, you may or may not remember it, it's absolutely fine. 194N has been amended, and there is some difference of opinion about how the institute applies it and how certain tax experts apply it. Right now in this revision video, I will discuss with you the way institute is doing it. I will not confuse you at the 11th hour. So we will stick to the pattern done by the institute. With all due respect, what the institute is doing is not the accurate thing. But let us not get into what is accurate and what is inaccurate. Let us stick to what the institute does. If you are withdrawing money from your bank account, if you are withdrawing cash from your bank account, this section is created as a discouragement. So these persons are the persons where you have a bank account with a bank, a cooperative bank, an account with a post office. If you withdraw cash greater than 1 crore, then on the excess amount that you withdraw, tax is deducted at the rate of 2%. Now the amendment introduced is, this section was there last year, 2019 also. The amendment introduced is, if you are a person who has not filed the return of income for all the last 3 assessment years, consecutive 3 past years, within the time limit of 139(1), which means either you have not filed the return at all, or you have filed certain returns as belated, or it's a combination of 1 and 2, that 1 year's return is not filed, 2 years return are filed belated, or 1 year's return is belated, 1 year return is not filed, 1 year return is filed on time. In simple terms, you are a person who has not filed a return for the last 3 years on or before the due date. Then your threshold will come down to 20 lakh rupees instead of 1 crore. TDS will be attracted the moment your cash withdrawal exceeds 20 lakhs. 2% of the excess, so 2% of the cash withdrawn minus 20 lakhs. And by chance, if your cash withdrawn goes above 1 crore, then your TDS will be 1 crore minus 20 lakhs. On this, TDS will be done at 2% plus whatever cash is withdrawn above 1 crore. On this, TDS will be done at a rate of 5%. So observe, what is a basic TDS rate? 2%. What is a basic threshold? 1 crore. 2% on the excess. But if you are somebody who has not been filing return properly, 1 crore ka threshold will come down to 20 lakhs. 2% will be the rate of TDS, but if you withdraw cash above 1 crore, your TDS rate will be 5%. So I've put up this thing in the form of a chart. This first proviso is an amendment. I've put it up in the form of a chart. You can refer to this chart. This will analyze the amendment quickly. Other points, theoretical knowledge, just give it a reading once. Whether you maintain a single account or multiple accounts, cash withdrawal will be done on a total basis. But if you maintain different accounts with different banks, each bank will apply this section separately. So from 3 banks, if cash is withdrawn 75 lakhs, no TDS will be done, although the total is above 1 crore. Current account, savings account with one bank on an aggregate basis, but with different banks, each transaction is separate. If government withdraws cash, no TDS. If one bank withdraws cash from another bank account, it is for banking facility, banking system, no TDS. If cash is withdrawn to load it into the ATMs, then the daily withdrawal will go above 1 crore if it's a huge bank. So then TDS provisions will not apply. If you are going to make payments to farmers for purchase of agricultural product and you are registered under APMC, like in New Bombay, there is a locality called as Vashi, where there is an APMC market. So when you are making payment to farmers, you might have to pay them in cash, and your yearly amount of cash withdrawn can go above 1 crore. Then there will be no tax deducted under this section. You are making a payment to farmer. You have to submit certain documents, and TDS will not be done by that bank. If you are a money changer, you buy currency, you sell currency, and you have the permission by RBI to do it. So for you, currency itself is the main thing. So you will withdraw cash from bank accounts, and so your cash withdrawn can go above 1 crore rupees, but TDS provisions will not apply. You just have to ensure that you maintain a separate bank account for this purpose so that you can prove if this cash withdrawal is for my business. Another section important as an amendment. Please ensure you study this properly. If we are talking about e-commerce transactions, then the persons involved is an e-commerce operator. This e-commerce operator is somebody like Myntra, Flipkart, who give a digital platform. People who sell their goods and services, they are e-commerce participants. Various persons like us, when we buy the goods, we take the services, we make a payment to e-commerce operator. There is no TDS done on this. We don't deduct any tax and make online payments. No. But when the e-commerce operator will make a payment to e-commerce participant, TDS will apply under section 194O. Things to remember, and please do ensure that you remember this carefully. This section has been introduced with effect from 1st October 2020. So the rate of TDS given is 1% in the section. But 1st October 2020 falls in that COVID relief period. So as far as your exams are concerned, you have to remember that the TDS rate is 0.75%. Also, why do you need to remember this? The institute can create a question where if the transaction has happened before 1st October 2020, if the transaction happens before 1st October 2020, then section 194O was not there only in the Income Tax Act. And if 194O was not there in the Income Tax Act, there is no requirement of any TDS. So just keep this date in mind. TDS will apply, payment or credit, whichever is earlier, fine. One case of non-applicability. If the e-commerce participant is an individual or HUF, and the amount does not exceed 5 lakhs, then if you furnish your permanent account number or Aadhaar number, 194O will not apply. Point to remember from this: if the e-commerce participant is not an individual, is not a HUF, then 194O will apply. If the amount exceeds 5 lakhs, then 194O will apply and TDS will be done at 0.75%. But if permanent account number or Aadhaar number is not submitted, then 194O will apply. But if you remember at the start of our lecture, I said that 194O will apply, but it will not be at 20%. It will be 5%. 5% or 0.75%, whichever is higher, but obviously it is going to be 5%. So for every other section, when you are not submitting permanent account number or Aadhaar number, 206AA will tell you 20%. But if the tax is to be deducted under 194O, it is at the rate of 5%. If permanent account number is not submitted. Suppose, coming back to this diagram, if the buyer makes a direct payment to the e-commerce participant, but the goods and services are purchased from that digital platform, so even this direct payment will be included in the TDS calculations. So when the e-commerce operator will do TDS, TDS will be done on this direct payment also. TDS will be calculated on this direct payment as well. If this section applies 194O, then other sections of TDS will not apply. No TDS will be done under any other section if you do TDS under 194O. Chalo, this brings us to the end of TDS. Now coming to the last part, TCS. Tax collected at source. A small point to keep in mind. Tax collected at source. Who will do TCS? So TCS will be done by the receiver of money. Who was doing TDS? TDS was done by the payer of money. TCS will be done by somebody who receives the money. So, if the transaction is a transaction of sale, it is the seller who will do TCS. If the transaction is a transaction of lease, the lessor will receive the money and the lessor will do TCS, lessor will collect the tax. Basic sections to remember. 206C, subsection 1, 1C and 1F. Subsection 1, alcoholic liquor, tendu leaves, timber, forest product, scrap, mineral oil. Minerals, sorry, not mineral oil, minerals. Seller will sell the product, collect the sale money and collect TCS. Rates of TCS: for alcoholic liquor, there is no reduction, 1%. For alcoholic liquor, no COVID relief. 1%, 2.5%, 5%, these are the TCS rates. If these products are being purchased for manufacturing or for generation of power and not for trading, then the buyer can give a declaration to the seller, and in this situation, the seller will not collect the tax. The declaration has to be given by saying that these goods are not for trading purposes, they are for manufacturing purposes. Remember that for this section 206C subsection 1, there is no threshold limit prescribed. Even if the sale value is as small as 5,000 rupees, tax will have to be collected at source by the seller. If the transaction is of a lease, then if these four assets are given on lease, lessor will give it on lease, he will collect the lease rent and he will collect the TCS at the rate of 2%. Reduction is available here. The COVID relief is available. The person who is paying the TCS, he will take a credit of this TCS from his income tax liability. So in case of 206C subsection 1, the buyer of these products will reduce the TCS amount from his income tax payable. In case of 206C subsection 1C, the lessee will reduce this TCS from his income tax payable. Parking lot, toll plaza, mining, quarrying, TCS applicable at the rate of 2%. If the payer does not submit permanent account number, then the receiver will collect TCS at double the rate or 5%, whichever is higher. This is section 206 206 double C. Earlier it was 206 double A for tax deduction. For tax collection, it is 206 double C. Double the rate given in the section. So if it is 1%, it will become 2%. If it is 1.5%, so it will become double 3% or 5%, whichever is higher. If you talk of subsection 1F, subsection 1F is talking about sale of motor vehicle. Quickly, it does not say motor car, it says motor vehicles. So even something like trucks, buses, they are also covered. It is not just focusing on cars. Cars, trucks, buses, everything is covered. Sale consideration should be greater than 10 lakhs. This has to be checked on an individual basis. And it does not matter that this car is for personal purpose or business purpose of the buyer. Why is the buyer buying it? Seller is not concerned. If the sale value exceeds 10 lakh rupees, he will take 1% of the entire sale value as TCS. COVID relief, yes, available 0.75%. But the sale value should be about 10 lakhs. Interestingly, government came out with a circular, frequently asked questions based on this 1F. And institute once had asked you a question exactly based on this. Only retail transactions are covered. When the car manufacturer will sell the cars to distributor, this section will not apply. When the distributor will sell it to the final customer, retail sales, this section of 1F will apply. Mode of payment is irrelevant. Paid by cash, paid by check, paid by 6 ABBA modes, does not matter. TCS will apply. If government purchases it, United Nations purchases it, embassies, foreign representatives, this section will not apply. It is applicable on an individual basis. If two cars are purchased from the same dealer, but each car has a sale value below 10 lakhs, TCS will not apply. One car has a sale value above 10 lakhs, one car has a sale value below 10 lakhs, TCS will apply only on that one car where the sale value is above 10 lakhs. If an individual is a seller and he was covered by audit in the preceding year, when he is selling the motor car, it is a second hand sale, but still he will have to collect the tax and deposit the TCS with the government. Just give it one reading. Who knows, the institute might create a similar question based on FAQs. You'll be able to answer this. Now coming to the amendment. Two subsections have been created. 1G, which covers two items. One, overseas remittance. Second, overseas tour package. If you are paying money for an overseas tour package, you want to go for a holiday outside India, you want to go for a business trip, but it is outside India, then no threshold limit. As a buyer, as somebody who is buying the package, you will pay the amount and that seller will collect TCS at the rate of 5%, whatever be the amount. So overseas tour program package is this simple. Whether I pay 1 lakh or 10 lakhs or 10,000, there will be tax collected at source, additional 5% I will have to pay. If I am making overseas remittance of money, if I am sending money abroad, then RBI has a scheme, liberalized remittance scheme. So I will contact a dealer. That will be a person who has permission from RBI. I will give him the amount that I want to remit. I will give him his charges also. And I will have to give tax collected at source, TCS, to him. I am the payer of money. I will give TCS. Now, in this case, government has prescribed threshold. If the buyer does not, sorry, what is the threshold prescribed? Let me stick to that thing first. If the amount that you want to remit is less than 7 lakhs, no TCS. Whatever may be the purpose, whatever purpose you are sending the money, if the money that you are sending is up to 7 lakh rupees, no TCS. If it exceeds 7 lakhs, then on the excess, you will collect tax. Now, if you are remitting money abroad for for education purposes, but that is being remitted out of loan obtained from a financial institution. So I have taken a loan from the bank. Bank has given a loan to me, and I am giving this loan money to a dealer, and I am telling him, dealer, please pay this money to this foreign university. Now, this amount is say 10 lakhs. Then on this 10 lakhs, tax will be collected at source at the rate of 0.5%, but that too on the excess. So there is an exemption of 7 lakhs. On 3 lakhs, there will be TCS. But if it is not this situation, which means I am sending money to a dealer, I am asking a dealer that please send this money overseas, please send this money abroad, but it is not from a bank loan, it is for any other purpose. It could be for education, but I am sending my own savings. It could be loan from friends and relatives. It could be some payment made for goods that I have purchased. It could be a gift given to anyone. It could be pocket money sent to my children who are studying abroad. Then if the amount that I am sending is greater than 7 lakhs, then I will have to give TCS. Now it will be 5% on the amount greater than 7 lakhs. Again, I'll repeat one thing. Please remember, if you are purchasing a tour package, then the 7 lakh exemption is not available. A tour package, that means I am talking about this situation. If it's a tour package, note limit, TCS will always be there. If I am remitting money abroad as per this liberalized remittance scheme, then there is a threshold of 7 lakhs. Only above 7 lakhs, tax will be collected. If the amount being remitted is for education, and for that I have taken an education loan from a financial institution, 0.5% on the excess. All other cases, 5%. Even this section is applicable effective 1st of October. So that implies that if in the CA final revision test paper, as I remember, CA final revision test paper, a very interesting MCQ was created, that there was remittance made before 1st October 2020. Now in this case, there is no TCS. No tax will be collected at source. All remittances made after 1st October 2020, TCS will apply. And when you count the threshold limit, you will take 7 lakh ka threshold limit for remittances throughout the year. Remittances happening before, remittances happening after 1st October. Take a total. If that total exceeds 7 lakhs, then TCS will be there. On which amounts? On the amounts in excess of 7 lakhs, provided they are after 1st October. If they are before 1st October, no need to collect tax. I'll repeat this for clarity. Remittances made before 1st October plus remittances made on or after 1st October. Take a total. If that total exceeds 7 lakh rupees, section applies. But how does the section apply? All remittances before 1st October, no TCS. All remittances after 1st October, TCS will apply, but only on the excess money over and above 7 lakhs, and on that excess, it will be either 5% or 0.5%, depending on the situation. Last amendment, sale of goods. Now we are already aware that sale of goods is covered by 206C subsection 1. Tendu leaves, timber, alcoholic liquor for human consumption, scrap, minerals. I am also aware that 1F, motor vehicle, can also be sale of goods. I could also be covered by 1G, where I am sending money abroad because there has been goods ka sale and purchase. These all are not covered in 1H. In simple words, the amendment of 1H will apply if your goods are not covered by subsection 1, subsection 1F, subsection 1G. Seller. A seller is someone whose sales turnover in the preceding year exceeds 10 crores. So only sellers operating at a large scale are covered by this section. Buyer. Buyer is somebody who is purchasing the goods, but government is not covered. A person importing goods into India is not covered. In fact, when you read the section, you realize that import of goods and export of goods, 206C 1H is not applicable. If the seller exports the goods, he will not collect TCS. If the buyer is in India and importing goods, that foreign seller is not required to collect tax. That means, in simple terms, for 206C 1H, the seller should be in India, the buyer should be in India, the seller should have turnover exceeding 10 crores in the preceding financial year. And today, when the seller is selling goods to the buyer, sale value should be greater than 50 lakh rupees. Then TCS will apply on the excess amount, sale value minus 50 lakhs. And the TCS rate applicable will be 0.1%. Again, a clarification, this section was introduced 1st of October 2020. And that means the TCS rate will be 0.1% original rate into 3/4. There will be a reduction, which means 0.075 is what you will have to follow. This is going to be the TCS rate. This subsection 1H was also introduced effective 1st October 2020. On the excess money over and above 50 lakhs, you will collect tax on that excess amount at 0.075%. So this brings us to the end of the revision. I hope you were able to revise this chapter quite properly. I've tried to do it in the fastest and the concise way possible. In the description, you will find the link of this PDF. Chalo, wish you guys all the very best. Study well, keep your calm in the exams, attempt as much as possible and write those answers first which you feel you know best. If you feel MCQs are too difficult to handle, you can study MCQs towards the end. You can write MCQs towards the end. Give your descriptive answers first. Try to attempt as much as you can. Chalo, all the very best, guys. Hope you have a good exam. Bye-bye.